What's up with the chanting in JJK? We're going to talk about that and a bunch of other manga questions straight from you guys. So if you aren't caught up on the manga, keep scrolling. Alrighty, y'all, to kick this off, we've got a pair of questions about chanting, and the top one here is from Kimos, who wants me to talk about chants in general, and then especially during the Gojo Sukuna fight, why were they showcased so much? So to begin with, chanting is just one part of the power system in JJK. It increases a sorcerer's output, if you will. Now, sorcerers can train and practice in order to shorten the chants or get rid of them altogether, but the sacrifice there is that you are losing some power. And we know this because anytime somebody has done like their Omega attack in JJK, they have done the chants. And we see this, for example, with Gojo's 200% purple. And I'm having huge deja vu right now. It's throwing me off. But we see this because Gojo fully does his chants, and the narrator basically spells this out for us, saying that the maximum output was reached because of the full chants without skipping a beat, without skipping a hand sign. And of course, because of Urahime's curse technique, amping it even further. But this just goes to show us that these are integral. It's one of the reasons why Sukuna is so powerful in his Heian era form, because he has an extra mouth that can just handle the chanting for him at all times. Now, as to why we haven't really seen it that much until the Gojo Sukuna fight, I think it's because those two are the anomalies of this universe, right? They are the absolute strongest. So when you're going to have those two titans clash, they're going to be using the full arsenal, the full potential of the power system. It was just the perfect opportunity for Gege to show what true masters could do in this world. So I think using the chance was a part of that. Again, like we saw with the 200% hollow purple and the attack that ultimately ended the battle with the dimensional slash. But, with a little asterisk next to that, because I do think Sukuna performed a binding vow to not have to do it on the one that ended up getting Gojo. But like we've seen, he's had to do the chants every other time since. And then to follow up on this question, we have this one from Amika, who asks what the symbolism of the words used in Sukuna's slash are. So the chanting there is scales of the dragon, repulsion, and twinned meteors, or paired falling stars, depending on the translation. And I wish I had like a super concrete answer, but I don't. I think there definitely is like symbolism or intentionality in that word choice from Gege, but at this point it's hard to really say. I do think that, Scales of the Dragon evokes like a mythical evil beast, right? Which is kind of what Sukuna is. Also, he said he was going to strip the scales from Gojo, so I don't know if there's a connection there necessarily, but it is interesting to think about. In repulsion, again, or repel, in the context of infinity, the fact that that slash repels it or ignores it entirely, there could be something there. And then finally, for the twinned meteor or the paired falling star, I've been talking recently about the Sukuna is a twin theory, so maybe a little something there. Sukuna also does have a pair of techniques, even though it's one technique with cleave and dismantle. So I don't know. This is pure conjecture on my point, but it's definitely interesting to think about. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts in the comments on what those might mean. And while we're on the subject of Gojo Sukuna, I had this question from Kumori, who basically asks if I think Gojo could have prepared more. And this brings up an interesting topic that I see a lot with Gojo, which is basically the talent versus hard work. Because Gojo was obviously born with a silver spoon in his mouth, right? The six eyes, the limitless, treated like a king. But this might be a topic for like its own video another time, but I personally think Gojo worked really hard. So for my money, I don't think he could have done anything different to prepare for the Sukuna fight. Now, obviously, like, no one's perfect. There's always something else you could have done or maybe done better. So, like, I'm not saying that. But I just think he took it seriously and he worked really hard. Like, during that month time skip, I'm sure he trained his ass off. He presumably trained while in the prison realm. I mean, he had nothing else to do, right? So I think Gojo did kind of prepare well. I wouldn't have expected, like, if he could do it over, he would, like, have tried harder or anything. I don't really buy that. But, it's interesting. To each their own, and I would love to hear y'all's opinion on this if you think that, he didn't take it seriously or just because of the privileged upbringing he's had, maybe he didn't train as much as he could have or should have. I do think one interesting element to this, though, is that having never been challenged in his life, basically from the moment he first lost to Toji till the Sukuna fight, yeah, I mean, maybe he got a little rough around the edges, if you will, just because he didn't have anybody to really challenge him. But I don't think that would have been from a lack of working hard. It just would have been from a lack of true challenge, I guess. And I'm repeating myself at this point, but yeah, would love to hear y'all's thoughts. Our next question comes from Ryan, who wants to know, why didn't Sukuna take over Megami's body in Shibuya? He was already at 15 fingers of strength, Uraume was back, and Gojo was sealed. So why wait, right? And the main thing boils down to because Megami wasn't primed to be his vessel yet. As we know, most people can't even be a vessel for Sukuna because they will just straight up die from ingesting the finger. And he was currently in Yuji, who was a prison for him, right? So Sukuna's main mission was to find himself a vessel. That's why he recognized the potential in Megami and was excited. Now, the reason he waited is because he needed to make sure that Megami wasn't going to be a cage for him and that he could actually utilize that vessel to its full potential. So in order to do that, he needed Megami to be at his lowest, to have his soul shattered, right? And that happens later on during the Culling Games after he finds out his sister isn't actually his sister anymore. It's an incarnated sorcerer. So at that moment, Megami is broken, right? He's dejected, and that's why Sukuna takes his chance there, because he knows he will have the easiest time taking over the vessel. And obviously, from that point, we know Sukuna goes on to do as much as he can to destroy Megami's soul further to perfect his hold over him. Next up, we got a series of questions from JC, and let's start with this top one up here about Hakari. Pause and read the whole thing if you'd like, but it's essentially asking, could he be invulnerable, super strong, and have super speed during his jackpot? And I think absolutely, right? I mean, ultimately, he has an infinite supply of cursed energy during that jackpot. So not only does he have the automatic RCT, but via cursed energy reinforcement, he's obviously going to be super strong. You know, he can pack a whole bunch extra on each of his punches. Obviously, he can make himself way more durable. And I too think he could increase his speed, although it's a bit harder to quantify in terms of having a lot of cursed energy, right? But, you know, you think of it like putting a ton of cursed energy reinforcement into your leg as you kick off the ground. I imagine that could make you faster. So that's essentially his whole power kit, right? Although I do think there's something to be said for Hakari on a roll. That terminology is used a lot. So maybe like the more jackpots he gets in a row, kind of his buffs just keep going. And obviously infinite is infinite. So it's not as if the second jackpot gives him even more cursed energy, but maybe he's just able to better utilize it. All right, our next question here is about Kashimo and his curse technique, and I wish we had seen more from it so I could explain more, but as we're told, he can just manifest phenomena by reconstructing his flesh with that electricity. Now, I would have liked to have seen more unique use cases for that, but I assume Kashimo wasn't holding back, so what we saw was probably like the most powerful form of it, basically just being way faster, his brain synapses firing quicker, and obviously those really powerful blasts that he was sending out. Now, interestingly, you ask if he had reverse curse technique, could he have used it more than once? And two answers to this. But first, no. I don't think even with reverse curse technique, you can use that more than once. It's just kind of inherently baked in that his flesh, his body would collapse after using it. So healing, I don't think, is relevant even. But also, on that note, I think Kashimo might have been able to perform reverse curse technique. It's hard to say because it never really was explicitly mentioned or called attention to, but there's some like minor injuries during the Hakari fight that seemingly heal, and then in this fight with Sukuna, that first world slash clips Kashimo's like arm or hand, and then in the following panels it's healed. So he could have reverse curse technique, or that could just be something with Mythical Beast Amber that like pseudo healed his arm or reformed it or something. Hard to say. Now for your next question, you're asking if Megami had reverse curse technique, could he revive his summons? Now if you're asking with like the act of reverse curse technique, like that healing energy, could he bring back his Shikigami? I don't think so. I don't think it would work that way. I think when they're dead, they're gone, right? But if you're asking if Megami's curse technique reversal, aka like Gojo's red compared to his blue, could the reversal of 10 Shadows be like to heal or revive the Shikigami? And that's really interesting. I mean, I honestly have no idea. Gege doesn't show us that many curse technique reversals in this series, and thinking about what the 10 Shadows might be is kind of like a fun thought exercise. And I've never heard that potential for it, but that would certainly be cool. And for your second half of the question about Mechamaru with reverse curse technique, that's certainly interesting because part of his heavenly restriction was his enormous range on his cursed energy manipulation. So theoretically, he would be able to manipulate positive cursed energy too, but it's very, very rare to be able to heal somebody else. And for what if Sukuna didn't have 10 shadows versus Gojo, I did a whole video on that what if scenario, so I will link it down below. And I'm out of time, you guys, so I will see you in the next one.